the project lead of Creative Commons Philippines since 2013 and is a proponent of the Philippine Commons, which advances open education and free culture. Ladies and gentlemen, Attorney Michael Vernon Guerrero.
Good afternoon. I am a former lead of Creative Commons. Creative Commons has disbanded the affiliate network starting this year. So everything will now be on a chapter orientation rather than on an affiliate network orientation. Okay. So we're talking about now as to the new GPL, the General Public License mechanism for the sharing of software. This is quite different from Creative Commons, which is for other copyrighted works, which can be shared openly with other people. As to GNU GPL, this is actually very specific as to software, because software or computer programs are actually protected under the copyright law, RA 8293, as amended by RA 10372. As a original work. So this matter is actually very specific to software. So GNU or GNU is not Unix. It's a reverse acronym, which doesn't actually mean that much. So it's just a circuitous definition, which actually doesn't provide for a real definition. So it's a Unix is a proprietary software before GNU was created as a non-proprietary version of it, and a lot of people actually are confused that GNU is actually Linux. Linux is a mere kernel of GNU. Okay, so when you talk about Ubuntu, for example, etc. Red Hat, etc. You talk about Linux, but Linux is just a mere kernel. The actual operating system is actually GNU. People say GNU, but GNU. It's like GRU without the R using N. So it was actually made back in the 1980s, and this particular development actually provided us with a concept about copyleft and free open source software. A lot of you would actually be, a lot of people with the layman orientation would not want to go into this particular kind of technology because they are somehow afraid of developments in technology. They actually would want to go with proprietary ones like the Apple Mac OS or Windows, which somehow would actually provide you with certain limitations as to what you can do with the software itself. So we actually have to distinguish about free for people who actually are in the technical orientation for free open source software. You actually know that the difference between free, it's not something about free beer, it's not about gratis or libre. We're talking about here about freedom, what you can do. Because if, for example, you actually would buy a particular kind of software, it's proprietary, you cannot really modify that one unless you actually would be part of the development, the community or development stuff of the particular proprietary software. Now, you want to somehow, if you're technically knowledgeable, you want to actually modify a particular kind of software to your liking, but in a proprietary software without their permission, then you actually will be violating copyright law. So this actually provides you with the freedom to actually modify certain software if they are licensed in a GNU GPL license mechanism. You can also somehow, even without being technical about it, you can actually have copies of it and actually distribute them to your friends, family, etc., to actually make your clone computer work without additional costs. So if you actually want to go to Guerrero and actually buy a unit which is actually cheaper, like a desktop, your problem before was to either shell out your money and actually get an operating system which is actually proprietary, or a lot of people actually go to the illegal mechanism of actually acquiring bootleg copies of those particular proprietary software because they are actually attuned to those kinds of functions. This is an alternative to that one. You have a functional equipment that would run on a legal orientation because people have given you the permission to install that particular software, use that particular software in your machines without much implication, unless, of course, you would be violating the terms and conditions thereof. So when we talk about freedom, you actually have the four kinds of freedom being mentioned always about the free software orientation. You actually have the freedom to run the program as you wish. In a proprietary software, you actually have to understand sometimes the end user license agreement or the terms and conditions for the usage of that one is very limiting. Let me give you an example. If you, for example, acquired a Microsoft operating system, like Windows, then you would buy an application such as Adobe, CS, whatever version, for Photoshop or for Illustrator stuff. Then the thing is, you have upgraded your computer and a new version actually came out. Then you still want to use that particular pump-up computer that you have and install the new one. Your problem now would be as to your old version. Because you already have registered that particular old version, now you can't even transfer it to a different kind of machine. What do you do with that one? And when, for example, you actually have used a new machine and you want to dispose of your old machine with the old program, and it's actually registered in your own name. Some of the terms and conditions sometimes would prevent you to actually pursue a parallel or downline sale of your previous licensed software. So what happens to that one? You actually have multiple versions and different computers or multiple software that you can only use one because that's the only one installed in your computer. The other ones would be just on the archive because you can only use one application in one unit, which have been previously registered with their server. So those particular limitations actually provide you with a big contrast regarding free open source software and proprietary ones. You can actually have no restriction as to the usage of the particular machine, of the particular software, which is actually free open source software. Now, also you actually have aspects wherein a particular software cannot be run if the end user license agreement only allows you to install it on a client computer. You cannot put it on a thin client orientation. For example, the software will be installed as a server and multiple thin clients without hard disks would actually be running that particular software on simultaneous instances. That will be in violation of EULA. But on certain softwares coming from free open source, you can actually have those ones, especially those which are licensed under the Affero General Public License. So these are things which you might want to consider. The other one would be you can modify the software as long as you would be able to attribute which parts are those coming from the original ones or the original distribution and which parts are yours so that there will be no confusion. All of this can actually be conveyed to everyone. And thing is, as to free, the freedom is there. And even if you acquired things for free, it doesn't actually limit you from actually making some money out of it. such as certain things like services that you may have in relation to the installation, modifications, etc. So all of these ones, freedoms 0, 1, 2, and 3, are quite formidable if in case you're actually a programmer creating, being part of this particular community of providing licensed open source software to everyone. Because if you actually have to deal with copyright law, you have some problems here. If, for example, as the EULA, the freedom to actually use, you actually have to go with the contractual obligations as you may have under the Civil Code of the Philippines, for example, in this particular jurisdiction. So whatever is actually written in the EULA, you actually have to comply with those ones, because if you will not comply with those ones, then you are already under copyright violation. On the other one would be, if the software doesn't have the open source or the source code for you to actually modify, then your problem would be that if you reverse engineer that particular object code or the machine code into something which is a source code or semblance of source code, the problem now would be the amendment of the intellectual property law in the Philippines. Before, back in 1998, the law allows you to decompile a particular software which is proprietary and create or possibly create a software or computer program that would run parallel to that one, as long as it will not it will not somehow compete with the original product. So if you actually have the operating software, you can actually modify the operating software, decompile, know how it's actually working, and actually create an app for that one. Or you may be having an application, and you actually would create a smaller application that would run in addition to this particular software without competing with that software on the same features. That was the thing that can be done back in 1998. But by 2012, the amendment of the law provided you that you can decompile the software which is proprietary, but the only thing that you can do with that one will be for you to know. The moment that even you create an article under this current amendment of the law, if you create an article on how this particular matters work and actually convey that to everyone, you are already in violation of the intellectual property law. That's how stringent 10372 was. You can decompile to know, that's it. That sucks, right? You want to do something more, but the thing is, that's the only thing that you can do under the law. If there would have been no permission coming from the copyright owner. Now, the thing is, as to matters involving the conveying of this particular software to everyone, if you have a software, you can only have one backup copy for archival purpose. You cannot make copies of the software and actually give it away to everyone and give them the crack keys, right? Those are in violation of copyright law. That's piracy, right? So these are problems that you actually have in proprietary in relation to free open source software, because now you actually have to consider one thing, especially to a developing country like the Philippines. You don't have equipment that runs properly, then you actually are a bit disadvantaged as to the output requirement of some other people who actually have money. Thing is, the free open source software mechanism provides you with a legal mechanism to have those particular equipment at a lesser cost. It also provides you with a particular freedom to modify things to actually make such software within the bounds of what you want it to be, what you want to achieve, without the prior permission of those particular developers of those ones, for you to make yourself more productive. So as a GNU licenses, you actually have to consider that there are four. One will be, what will be discussed now will be the GNU General Public License. The other one would be the Lesser General Public License. The other one will be the Affero General Public License. And the other one will be the Free Document License. As a General Public License, these are normally most of the new software. This is the license you actually have for those ones. And most of them are actually for the orientation of standalone usage for a particular client computer. As to the lesser general public license, you're talking here about libraries, because a software sometimes would actually have dependencies as to certain software already available on the net. And these are actually part of the distribution package for you to actually use for your software to actually run. As to the Affero aspect, these are the ones actually working on a network. You actually have a server orientation, and the code is actually being made available over the network. So thin clients can actually of use here, especially as those software which actually are running under Affero's general public license. Now, all documentations pertaining to this particular software, especially as to how to, are actually under FDL, free document licenses. Now, please remember that as to the valuation of the freedom being made under GPL or the other licenses, it is similar to Creative Commons licensing for attribution share alike. It means you have to attribute what was done or the source of it from those source individuals or the source organization. And when you actually have a copy and modify the particular one, then it will be under the same license in which it was actually given or imparted to you. So if you receive a particular software under GNU GPL, then you should be able to provide for the attribution that this particular software was actually coming from this particular individual or group of individuals or organization. And then if you modify that one, then you actually have to share your work also under the same license, which is actually GNU GPL. Now, as for the GNU GPL, we actually have to consider the table of contents for that one. We know that a lot of individuals wouldn't want to actually read those particular fine print. Anybody of you actually read the details or the fine prints of your insurance policies? They are quite small. You don't want to actually read those ones. No. You just want, I just sign. Or if you actually go to the internet or even install any software, you say, I agree, without even reading anything about it. But you actually are bound by those particular ones, those particular contractual obligations for those ones. Especially if you would now modify those particular software in a particular way. You should actually be alert or knowledgeable of what you are obligated to do if you already would now make use of this particular software because of the license. Please remember, as to license, we're talking about permissions here. We're not talking about government licensing mechanism that you can only use that particular software because government would allow you. No. Permission here is actually being given by those who own the copyright of that particular software. And you become also a co-owner of the particular work if you create a derivative of it, your modifications. Okay? So, the document itself actually provides for the preamble. It actually tells you what the intent of the license is for, what is the software for. Then you actually have to provide for the nitty-gritty orientation as to what can actually be done. The definitions, the basic permission, additional permissions. But I think it's all jumbled up as to if you just want to go for the distribution or conveying of verbatim copies, or if you actually are conveying modified copies of it. And people, there actually are 17 items there, and a lot of people are not reading those. So, in the end of that particular license, they actually even provide you with an illustration on how to actually provide for the notification mechanism if you would modify the software and create your own. So let us go through each, okay? You have these particular kinds of conditions and obligations. It depends upon what do you want to do with the software. Number one, if you're just conveying or propagating covered works, meaning if, for example, you actually have the source code or the object code of LibreOffice, for example, is a free Office suite that you can actually use instead of Microsoft Office, right? But of course, a lot of people would say, well, the presentation in PowerPoint is actually better than LibreOffice. Anyhow, when you propagate, you actually have to consider two things. One would be the source code, and the other one would be the object code. A lot of people actually who are not technical would be thinking, what the hell is object code? Let me provide you with a particular kind of orientation. A source code will be that particular programming mechanism based on the interface as to your computer language, whether you're actually doing it C, C#, C++, whatever. If you're providing for that particular kind of procedure as to how it will be computed, or how that particular software would run, then that would be the source code. So you would, if you are a programmer, then you would know how this particular software would run based on its process, as to its modules, as to its as to its code or programming code. That's source code. You always hear source code when you talk about PCOS in your election machines. And a lot of people cannot see the source code unless they will be allowed by those proprietors of those particular PCOS machines. And you, as ordinary people, would not know how the machines would actually read your votes during election time. Problem there will be the instruction being made to the computer is actually based on the source code. How would this particular marks be read? This is the one actually being made by programmers. It's actually based English and math. That's source code. If you can understand those ones, you know how it will run. But the thing is, when that particular source code is actually compiled into machine code, that will be object code. So normally you talk about distributions here. These are the ISO files if you actually would download a Linux software like Ubuntu, for example. Now, as a source code, it has to be in a format of standard interface. It has to be on one specific computer language with all those particular comments available. This particular source code provides in the particular GPL that you are allowed to actually convey those ones, actually use those ones, modify those ones, etc. Now, the thing with technology right now, there are mechanisms to actually lock those up by using technology measures. Let me give you an example before. decades ago, you actually have those particular MP3 available on the internet, which you would download from proprietary sources. That if you download it to one device, you cannot actually use it, transfer it to a different kind of device. This was before clouds. Okay? Those particular mechanism of locking those up for it not to be used somewhere else are called technology measures. Now, some people would actually employ technology measures because they are distributing those ones. But you actually have to understand, under the GPL orientation, those technology measures should not in any way impair your freedom to modify, etc., or even make use of the particular free open source software. Now, if you're just distributing or conveying those one, you can actually convey the verbatim source code because you're not modifying on it. Now, you can also, on that particular matter, that is the source code aspect. Then you also have the object code. The object code will be those distributions like the ISO files. The ISO files do not need to include the libraries available somewhere else. But the installation instructions for that one should actually be made there to actually aid people in installing those particular software properly. Okay. Now, in all matters about distributing things, you are not required to actually provide for support. For example, if I have a Moodle software and actually some people don't have internet and I just have to download that one and give it away through USB, or actually sold it because for the cost of the USB and the download time, I am not obligated by distributing that one to give you support if something goes wrong with your installation. I don't have to provide you with services support. Okay? Then, the thing is, if I have given and conveyed that to you, you also have the particular license to actually convey it to somebody else. That's how it actually would cascade. Now, thing is that we're just conveying a verbatim one. The other one will be to modify another. If you modify something, please be aware that there should be no confusion as to the source code of the original and the source code as to what you have modified. Because when you modify something, it has to be quite clear, because without those particular comments, it might happen that there might be an impression that this particular part, which might be problematic, also comes from those people who made the original one. To actually ensure quality aspects of it and also attribution aspect of it, if you modify a particular portion, then you actually have to provide for highlight as to which parts you actually have modified. Okay? So again, as the source code is the same thing, except that you will be the one conveying modified sources with proper notation that this particular software was modified by you. In which parts, okay? Now, as the object code, you actually have to consider that they actually are the same except for additional terms. Because additional terms can actually be that you are sharing a particular modified software with content. For example, you actually have Moodle, that is the original software. What if you actually have to put additional content for that one and actually distribute the content itself? And the content can actually be what? A proprietary article, picture, etc. Those will not be covered by FDL, GPL, or etc. Can actually be covered by copyright, can actually be covered by a personal license, or actually can be based on a Creative Commons license. Those particular permission can actually be placed in your documentation. Okay. So, the thing is, again, those particular permissions that you actually have made, in addition to the basic information provided in the GPL, should actually be notated properly in your interface. Okay? But those permissions should not in any way modify or impair the freedoms ensured by GPL. The freedom to convey, the freedom to modify, etc. Now, Commonality, again, sometimes since you are the one contributing certain additional code for that one, and you actually hold patent ownership from the other countries, because in the Philippines, there's no patent protection for computer programs. But if you hold on those ones, you cannot enforce the patent mechanism as a limitation to the freedoms being provided under GPL. Your liability as to other obligations you actually have with third parties should not be in any way affecting the GPL. If your obligation with third persons, your patent would actually affect the freedom, then better not convey them as GPL software licensed. Okay? Or licensed software. Now, as to aggregation, sometimes you actually have multiple softwares or computer programs which actually would work independently of each other. So the thing is, you are not to actually integrate the license mechanisms. You can actually have them independently. Okay? So, this is the content of those, this is the preamble. I just actually put certain comments to put them in pieces. Now, these are the content of the the definition, the source code, basic permissions. This is the technology, call this, technology measures mechanism, no circumvention aspect of it. Repeating copies. This is for the distribution aspects. This is the ISO files, etc. You actually have additional terms as to the additional permissions you want to give. Termination. If that particular use of the software is contrary to terms and conditions, the permission automatically ceases. So if you violate the terms and conditions of the GPL as a user, then you already are violating copyright law. It's not breach of contract. It will be copyright infringement. Okay? So again, no warranty that it actually would work the way you actually anticipated it to work. Okay? Now, this is how to apply the notification aspects. You just have to, this is actually a pattern in which you actually have to put in what needs to be placed there, who you are, where it's coming from, what its purpose are, what date and stuff. This actually provides you with a mechanism that you don't really have to draft it on your own. And most of these particular instructions actually embed details of the terms and conditions already of the GPL, General Public License, into the particular notification. So they are actually making it quite easy for you to actually convey new works or even the original works to everyone, so that people can actually develop their own creativity and make them more functional. Okay? So this particular this presentation, if you want to get a copy, get it from the Secretariat, and it's actually shared under Creative Commons share, attribution share alike. So you can actually make money, share it to your friends, family, and enemies, yes. So there's no problem with that one because, again, it's similar to GNU GPL. You can actually share it and actually convey it to everybody else for their own information instead of getting a pamphlet and actually sell it to you, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Attorney Michael Vernon Guerrero. Please stay at the lectern to answer. We have time for one question.
Okay.
If we create a custom plug-in that runs on Moodle, is it automatically considered under a GNU license? A custom
license.
plug-in.
This is a blog.
No, a plug-in. A plug-in.
A plugin.
Yes.
A plugin is a okay. It's something like an application, yes.
Yes, you plug in, let's say, a new functionality for
Yes.
your Moodle platform. Yes.
So it's actually an addition to the particular new software. And
Yes.
the new software was actually licensed separately. If you actually would create that particular plugin, that can actually be also subject for another new license.
Uh-huh.
So that can actually be an interoperative software that can actually run also for that one. But you actually have to consider first whether that particular plugin is actually proprietary or also for sharing.
Well, the question here is that can that plugin be commercialized? What if the plugin is an improved version of an existing Moodle plugin that reuses current codes?
For commercial orientation.
Yes.
Now, please remember that new GPL allows you to actually make money out of it because, again, free deals with freedom, not gratis. It's not free beer. It's about your freedom, like freedom of free speech. So if you create a particular one, modify that one, the original plugin was actually allowing you to actually make money out of it. That's a commercial orientation.
Yes.
So if you actually modify that one and actually make it more efficient, then what prevents you from actually making commercial usage of it? Because it's actually freedom, not about giving away for things for free.
Yes. Right.
So again, that was one of the concepts we actually had on the initial onset, that freedom is not equal to libre. Right?
Okay, thank you very much, Attorney Michael Vernon Guerrero. Yes, marami pong salamat. If you please, you can exit.